My name is Cheria, and for a living, I turn workplaces into growth spaces. This podcast is a front row seat into my own personal and professional development as I talk with inspiring people about the growth that takes place at the intersection of work and life. Welcome to Grow There with Cheria. So it's Christmas morning, 1991, and I am so excited to open my presents. Every year, we usually had one kind of special present. And this year, I was just crossing all my fingers and toes that the baby Jesus brought me a Game Boy. I wanted one so bad. LOL at the baby Jesus bringing me a Game Boy because my parents didn't let me believe in Santa. So I didn't believe in Santa. It could have only been the baby Jesus. Oh, that really cracks me up. Anyways, I had really wanted a Game Boy. And we're opening up our presents and we get to what is the special present. And I open it up and it is not a Game Boy. It's a Super Nintendo. Now, you might be thinking, that's an amazing gift. That's so great. And it was. But the reason why my dad gave me Super Nintendo was that he said Game Boy was a selfish toy because you could only play by yourself. But a Super Nintendo, everyone can play. And I wasn't really thrilled about that. But I have to say, he was right. Unfortunately, that day, him and my Uncle Charlie played on the Super Nintendo the entire day because they were two grown men who, I don't know, discovered video games for the very first time that day and couldn't put them down. But overall, my dad was right. There were far more memories built by having played my Super Nintendo, me and my sister, me and my friends that would come over. And what I learned from this is sometimes it's better to go at the game of life, not alone, but in partnership with someone else. Sometimes it's better to play a two-player game. And our guests today, there are two of them, decided earlier on in their careers that they weren't going to go at this game of life alone. And they coupled up and have done some extraordinary things. Kass and Mike Lazerow are serial entrepreneurs and investors. Their journey began just as friends growing up in the suburbs in DC until they started dating after reuniting at a mutual friend's wedding in 1996. Just 2 years later, they did what all new couples in love do. They co-founded a company together, golf.com. After selling golf.com to Time Warner in 2006, Kass and Mike co-founded Buddy Media, a leading social media marketing platform that sold to Salesforce in 2012 for a measly $745 million. Since then, they have focused on providing capital and advice to the world's most innovative founders, supporting close to 100 early stage startup founders, including as angel investors to Scopely, which sold to Savvy Games for $5 billion in 2022, and Liquid Death, the canned water company whose evil mission is to make people laugh and get more of them to drink healthy beverages more often, all the while helping to kill plastic pollution. They live in New York City and the Hudson Valley. They have 3 grown children and 2 rescue dogs. And I'm so excited because today their book, Shoveling Shit, has hit the market. It's been released today, and I had the privilege of reading it ahead of time, and it is so good. We're going to dive into it today, but I can't wait to get out of the way and get them up here. So without further ado, it's time to grow there with Kass and Mike Lazerow.
Kass and Michael, it's so good to have you on Grow There with Cheria. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
Listen, I have to tell you, Kass, you sent me the book. I feel so lucky to have been able to peek in ahead of time. And I often get sent books and, sometimes I have to skim through them. I couldn't skim through this. I had to read it all and I gobbled up every word. I truly loved
Thank
it.
you.
I thought it was so great, and I feel so just privileged to be sitting in this space of greatness right now because there's just so much wisdom that you all have, so much experience, so much you're going to share with the world. And I'm so grateful our friend Ross Martin connected us because I'm just thrilled to be having this conversation with you all today. So thank you again, 1,000 times again. So, we're going to dive in, and it's funny, while I was reading the book, I was and this episode will air, I think, the week your book is, like, the
Right.
blitz for the book. So
Yeah.
the timing is amazing. But when I was reading the book, it's called Shoveling Shit for those of you who are listening. I thought, this is like the thesis statement for my podcast. It's like it captures it so beautifully. So I'm asking you all to tell me a story about a time in your lives when work and life intersected and how you grew from that. And I feel like your life is one big work-life intersection. So I'm going to get out of the way and let you tell whatever story it is that you two want to tell.
Mike, why don't you start?
Yeah. So, there's no kind of work-life balance or separation for us. We love people we work with. We don't see another way around it. Like, if you don't work with people you love, who do you work with? And so the idea of starting companies together to us was never an issue. However, it created a lot of turmoil in our life. As all entrepreneurs know, you go into it thinking that you're going to have this life of freedom. The reality is that you are tied to the business. The business is your life. Your life is the business. Things are always falling apart. You can't turn it off. You're not just showing up to work and mailing it in.
Yeah.
And so when I think of the stories that it really came together, it's really around the birth of our kids. And we've since talked to a lot of entrepreneurs who struggle with the idea of, like, when do we want to have kids? Should we wait? Should we wait till we make all the money? And it's really a personal decision. I would, try not to recommend anything in particular. But I remember we were running golf.com. It was a business that was early internet. We had a few tentpole events, the Masters being one of them. And we got really lucky because there was this young kid named Tiger Woods who looked completely different than anyone else who'd ever played golf on the professional level. He was a black kid from LA who had the most beautiful swing ever and showed up to Masters, which Augusta at the time, we're thinking, late 90s, early 2000, was, really as white as it gets, right? There weren't many, minority members. There were no women members. It was before, like, this whole movement like you have today, where it's, compared to that, a much more diverse. And so Tiger, we just rode this global phenomenon, and it's hard to understand what Tiger meant to the world. Think of, like, Taylor Swift and Michael Jordan in one human being, where, like, you just said Tiger, any city, any town, anywhere in the world, and they know Tiger Woods. And so we decided to have our second kid, and Kass, as you probably know, has all the kids C-sectionally. She has a very narrow birth canal, which you would never know looking at her. But it's just is what it is. It's a fact. I have nothing to do with it. But she goes in to, it wasn't scheduled. She goes into labor. We rush in. It's an emergency. And this is on a Friday night. She has, Cole on a Saturday. Cole is our second, and the Masters is going on. And so I'm now running the business, golf.com, because Kass, who usually runs the business, is having babies for both of us. I benefited from it. And I need her to change the ads that are running on the site because, like, we generate like $1 million of our revenue in this weekend, and we have the wrong ads. And so I take out the computer. She had just given birth minutes before, and I asked her to make the changes because I'm relatively incompetent when it comes to, like, operational stuff like that. And then, fast forward, and our next business, Buddy Media, was born in the waiting room as she was having Vivian, our third kid. Mark Zuckerberg got up on stage. He announced the F8 at F8, their developer platform. And I just knew that was going to be the business that we were going to get into, and that was Buddy Media. And so there's no good time to have kids. There's no ability to choose certain life moments, births, deaths, weddings.
Yeah.
And that's what comes to mind as you ask that question.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I can't wait to dive in. I think that what you shared was one of the things that certainly stood out to me most in the book is just seeing and the champion that is Kass to be birthing children into the world while you all are supporting one another and keeping your livelihood afloat. And I think the mental fortitude that it takes to do that it takes to, and Kass in a really tangible way, be literally healing, bringing life into the world and then healing your body at the same time as you are birthing other works into the world. Like it's just, it's such
a lot.
It's a lot. So I'm curious for both of you, when you think about that, it almost feels so trivial to ask what the true growth was, but how do you see your growth in that story that Mike just shared?
I think the growth for me was that I think there were some reflection points. I think one of it was after Cole, I kind of realized, wow, you feel like an entrepreneur, but in those moments, I think the whole glorification of what it is to be an entrepreneur just bursts, right?
Yeah.
Because this was like what most people would say are sacred moments that, you're not going to let anything in and you're going to be super present. And this was, I just remember Mike's face. And I had, what a lot of people don't know is I'd had a stroke with Cole's birth. And luckily it was just the epidural going up to my brain, forming a clot and then resolving. And yes, I had my face was down for 3 or 4 months, but it wasn't like anything stopped. So in that moment, I think I realized, wow, this is going to be always on and just part of us. Yeah. And then when Viv was born and Mike said, oh my gosh, I have the idea. It wasn't a surprise. I think for me, I had to gear up for it. I think I was just saying, okay. And I'm going to buckle in and I'm going to put my seatbelt on and just let it be, let the idea be. Because Mike and I have done everything together and we have all of our eggs in one basket. There was no parachute or backup, payroll coming in or salary. Yeah. So it was a buckling up kind of moment with our last child.
Yeah. What about you, Mike?
I think the biggest thing that we've learned very early was how to operate in a world of kind of fear and uncertainty and doubt. So when you start a company, it's all dark and you don't know what you don't know. You can't necessarily see clearly the way out, but you're just walking around the room trying to find the door to get out, but it's pitch black, right?
Yeah.
Slowly over time, you find the door, you get to light, you know where the kitchen is, you know where everything is, and you kind of grow from there. And I think what this book is about in many ways is kind of our story of how we went from dark to light, how we figured things out along the way. And, launching a business, it's a very similar thing to having your first kid, right? Like you have 9 or 10 months to basically perseverate about, am I going to be a good parent? Am I going to screw up the kid? Are they going to ever be out on their own? Can I keep them alive? Right. Which is basically not that dissimilar to can we build a product? Can we sell it? Can we ever get profitable? Right. And so I think doing all this stuff together was a process of learning. And, it's not a how-to book, but there are 50 cheat codes we counted that we wish we had known when we launched the businesses, right?
Yeah.
Everything from building culture to like how to pick co-founders, how to greenlight ideas, how to raise money effectively, how to focus an organization, all these things that like, let's say we did some of them like 10, 11, 12 times before getting it right. And so when I think about these stories, we were in like max fear and uncertainty, both at the business and on the parenting front.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's so many things packed into what you're saying. And I want to just say for the record, I feel like I'm the reluctant entrepreneur. I didn't expect to become an entrepreneur. And I started this consulting business. And while it's very different from the work that you all do, and I really appreciate it, there's a part in the book where you talked about, being a consultant is being, you are the product of the business.
Yeah.
So it's very different. But reading through was so cathartic because the dark that you're talking about is a real place. It's a real thing. And I always say I'm always walking this line of total joy and amazement that I'm doing this and being completely terrified at the same time. So reading through it felt so cathartic to hear
There's
you all talk
beauty in the struggle, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's
we also
why
didn't write it for like, I'm glad it came through when we were writing this book, I was thinking about restaurants and salons and consulting companies and accountants. It's the life of a tech entrepreneur is relatively easy, meaning many of us went to good schools. We were born on second or third base. If the company doesn't work out, if you're a good engineer starting a company, you could probably make $500,000 at like Google if you're in AI. Whereas a lot of our friends who run restaurants and run kind of businesses that, their family depends on for income and there's no safety net.
Exactly.
That's who we're trying to help, not just the tech founders.
Yeah. And I really feel like that came through. I felt like this is a book I want to give to every young person who says they want to start a business. Every like one of my friends that has a dream that, to your point of starting a restaurant or salon, because that's what I feel like most people have a dream to do, but don't really know what the entry point is. So this just felt so good. Before I keep going, Kass, I want to come to you and see if you have a story that you would like to tell or if you want to keep riffing off of this one.
My story that comes to mind was when we had, in the height of the .com boom in 2000, we had in December of 99 sold our first company, golf.com, to chipshot.com. They were out of California. They were making custom golf clubs, and they were going public. And this was the height of, e-toys being worth, $1 billion and crazy stuff like that. And we thought we had made it. And Mike and I had spent a year eating ramen and burning CDs as holiday gifts for our family and not going out and not really having, much money and really doing this incredible grind. And all our investors and board voted it. And they were supposed to go public in April of 2000. And in March, we got this call that they were going bankrupt, that Sequoia had pulled out, and that we were going into bankruptcy. And I remember, you talk about a moment that crashes between personal and professional. Yeah. I had this panic, not about our, like how were we going to eat? How were we going to do this? But I all of a sudden felt this immense responsibility, obviously, to all of our employees and what was going to happen to them. Yeah. And it was just this confusing, overwhelming feeling of anger, frustration, sadness, and then vulnerability that we were going to have to say, like, this happened to us and happened to all of us, but we were going to fight our way through it. Yeah. That was another thing I really loved about the book was the vulnerability that you pulled in, that there's such difficult decisions that you have to make when things in and out of your control happen. Yeah. And, I know
how important culture is for you, Kass, and we'll talk, and Mike as well, but I know specifically, Kass, you and I have talked about it. But I can imagine when you've built something and then not only is this impacting my personal and professional life, it's going to impact the personal and professional lives of the people that we've brought in.
Exactly. I mean, it's everything, right? It's,
Yeah.
I go to this, I remember thinking one of our employees just got this job because her husband had been laid off. And, I'm starting to like inventory everybody and where they are and how I was going to be impacting them. So it's a big responsibility.
What was your biggest kind of growth takeaway from that?
The biggest lesson in everything that we've ever learned has probably come from like the largest amount from that exact instance. And I think we learned that transparency is the way to glue people together. And so we had always been transparent, mostly to a fault about how things were going, sales. And I think over time, even all the way up through Buddy Media and what we now say to investment portfolio companies is be radically transparent because people appreciate information. They can handle bad news. They just can't handle surprises.
Yeah.
They feel manipulated. They feel taken advantage of. And so we learned that because we had been so transparent all along, and even through the decision that we weren't totally sure that this was going to be a good thing, but that we were hopeful. And then for it to not turn out, when we told everybody that we could no longer pay their salary and that we had to get back on the road and find money, not one person left.
Incredible. I mean, it's so incredible. And I hope that there are executives listening to this right now, because what you're saying about radical transparency is so important. And I love you talk a little bit about how you're so transparent. Like you would say, what the money is that's coming in, how much money is left in the bank, like to that end. And I think there's so many folks that just try to shield that from their people, and in so doing, insult their intelligence. To your point, I think create paranoia.
Yes.
Where there doesn't need to be any, even when times are tough. If you've built that kind of culture of transparency, and if you've proven that you're for your people, you're proven, case in point, they are going to stay even when the worst thing happens,
or they're going to stay when you need to pivot the business model because they have faith in you, right?
Yeah.
That's the big part.
Yeah. Mike, anything you want to weigh in on this?
I mean, Kass nailed it.
Yeah.
I think it just gets back to what we see as the biggest blocker for many entrepreneurs we work with. Not only do we start companies, we've invested in over 100 entrepreneurs. And it's often this like fear, which drives like decisions like not sharing information, not really engaging around the hard stuff. And if you can really embrace the misery, it's not about loving the hard conversation, but if you can embrace the suffering and getting the elephant in the room, you can build vulnerable relationships that really scale. And, failure isn't something that should be feared. I don't love it, but how do you learn, rise stronger? And the best entrepreneurs are kind of full of grit and passion and believe that life's too short to play it safe. And it makes sense to take calculated risks and make mistakes. And, some of the best ideas and businesses come from like really messy, chaotic places at the beginning.
Yeah. Definitely. I think most of them do, because they mostly start with a problem that needs to be solved. I think usually that whatever that problem is the center of some chaos. And, it's dawning on me that the language around entrepreneurialism, sometimes like it takes a certain kind of crazy to want to be in this world, you know, like it takes a certain kind of crazy to say, I'll do that. I'll go and do this crazy thing and live my life on the edge. And so but I do think there is something for everyone, whether people listening have the entrepreneur spirit or not, because I also think that the grit and tenacity with which you are self-actualizing through business also is something that we have to do to stay present and engaged in our own lives, whether we work a traditional job, whether we're a stay-at-home parent, whether we're a caregiver, whether we are an entrepreneur. That same commitment to getting on the court and living on the court is what is the spirit of this book. And I love that the tagline is a love story about the entrepreneur's messy path to success, because I almost feel like you can pluck that love story and put it into a love story for how you're going to navigate your personal life, how you're going to navigate your relationships, you know?
And we also say that everybody's an entrepreneur, right? If you think of it that way, I think that's what you're saying, is that even if you have a job at a big agency or, you know, a big accounting firm, you still have to embrace the uncertainty, the vulnerability, the uncomfortable conversations, the climb of your career path, whatever that may be. And the same thing is, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I think I'm an entrepreneur as a mom. I just happen to have personally 3 very difficult board members as my children, who are very difficult. But, you know, you have to have that spirit. And I think if you can embrace that icky part and say, icky comes with the territory, right? That's life, right? You can't control things. And like Mike said, if you can operate within a storm, you're not sidestepping it. You're not ignoring it. You might not like it, but you've got to figure out how to operate within it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you nailed the title. Like, you nailed what we're trying to do with the title, because you know, you open up Instagram and it's just like, oh, we're crushing it. You have this hustle culture and you have all these pictures of like entrepreneurs driving Lamborghinis, but little do you know, like, that person's living in their parents' basement. And there is, you know, when I talk to entrepreneurs, I know I felt like this. There's no harder or more miserable way to spend your day. And we love it. We wouldn't do anything else, because that's where passion comes from. And we wanted to capture the idea that, it's like shoveling shit, but it's not a bad thing. It's a love story, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, that dichotomy is the same dichotomy you see in the entrepreneurial experience, where there's like, you get into it for freedom, but there comes so much responsibility that you don't feel free, right? The line between success and failure, like, you have a vision that you talk to your investors and the market about, and then you look down, and reality is something you have to grapple with, because it's usually not that, right? It's like, you need both innovation and stability. You need independence and collaboration. So all of these things that kind of, you have to be able to hold both at the same time, which seem incongruous, right? So they seem like these like dialectical things of like, how could these two be true? How could you kind of be shoveling shit and love it? That's what we want to capture here.
And that is why I said this feels like the thesis of this podcast, because I think so often we try to compartmentalize these aspects of our life.
That's
but
right.
If we embrace that this whole life experience is about these tension points.
That's
the
right.
whole life experience is about learning the meditative practice of shoveling shit, you know, and learning how to be present in that and self-actualize through that. So I think it's just so powerful. And I just love hearing it from you all's lens. And I want to talk a little bit about culture, because you talk about it in the book. Cass, you and I got to talk about it, but obviously I run a culture consulting firm. And even though on this podcast, we bring people from all walks of life to talk about what happens, the growth that happens at this intersection, I also want it to be in service of giving advice to business leaders and entrepreneurs about what it is. And it can be anything, the biggest advice that you would give about how this intersection and the things that you have learned can benefit a culture. What is like your number one piece of advice that you would give to business leaders and businesses about how to do that?
About culture,
Yeah.
I would say there's probably like a 1A, B, and C. And the
Yeah.
one is you're building a cult for good. If you think about culture, first 4 letters are cult. It has a negative connotation. So your job is to create it in such a positive way. And you've got to do that with traditions, symbols, experiences, activities.
Yeah.
You are not going to create a incredible culture by standing back and standing offish, right? You have to be part of it. And we tell all of our entrepreneurs there should be no difference in your personality when you speak to a board member and when you speak to an employee, period. So there should be no difference. There should be a collaborative spirit, if you will, of who you are that's shared throughout. Therefore, again, it goes to the idea that you're showing your true self, whether it's a vulnerable day at the office to a great day. You're celebrating the good with them, and you're asking for support in the times that are difficult. And so I think too many people have different personas. And I wish leaders could realize that if you just be yourself and break down those barriers and stop projecting out what you want other people to think of you, good things happen.
That's so freaking good. That's so freaking good. Mike?
Yeah, I mean, Kass, as always, kind of nails it. Yeah, but I think the advice on culture that, I'm constantly working with our companies on is, and it may not seem like culture, but it's really focus. So organizations that are focused on the right stuff and communicate that focus to the entire organization, and everyone within the organization knows how they level up to the most important things in the business, you create a mission-driven organization that's not just about the work you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. So you feel like, as humans, we want to feel like we belong. We want to feel like we're part of a community, and we want to show why we're different. And we spend more time at work than doing any other single thing other than sleep, right? For some of us, and a lot of us don't get sleep. And being able to kind of show who you are as an individual, but know that you belong to this larger purpose, and you can see how your contributions kind of contribute to the overall organization. When you have an unfocused organization, people don't know why their work matters, why it levels up to the mission the company's on. You have a bunch of people who are just getting a paycheck and who aren't making a difference.
And they're
especially young people,
right?
Like young people want to make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Kass, you were saying, and they're disconnected.
They're just like totally disconnected. Like I think Mike and I've seen it with our investment companies. Like if you look at some of, the best companies out there, the ones that succeed, Mike nailed it when he said they know what the purpose, they have found purpose within a company. And that's another tent pole of culture, is that they feel that they are bigger than just their job, just what they're contributing. And if you can do that, and you can provide traditions and acknowledgments and support, and you can have that going both ways, right? Then it's less of it can be a hierarchical organization, but it's one in which you're happy to go to work to and work for every day.
Yeah. I think the two things that you both said just sit so well with one another, because Mike, as you're talking about the company really knowing what its focus is, it's giving your people something to aim for and something to believe in. And when there's a current of belief in your everyday life, when you walk in the doors of the work, or when you or walk in the doors of your office, or you sign on to Zoom, you don't realize how much that belief current keeps you operating from a place of radical optimism. And when you bring that radical optimism into the workplace, well, you're also creating space where people belong, where people feel like they can show up as their most authentic self, because we are all aligned to the same belief system. And I think a lot of times companies spend tons of money putting words on a wall, but they don't actually operationalize that through what you're talking about, Kass, which are the rituals and the ceremonies and the activities and these things that keep reinforcing what that belief system is and why we're here and what it's all about. And I think you really have proven through your businesses that making that part so foundational. Well, let me back up. The other thing is you're really about creating like founding members of your organization and recognizing the power of that.
Yeah.
And once you have that really, what's the word I'm looking for? When your founding members recognize the gravity of that position, that they how they show up is propagating the future. How they will directly impact what the outcomes are.
Yes.
That's when you know you're making magic. And then you all talk about how then you don't let anything come in and snuff that out. You don't let, Kass, you talk about having those crucial conversations when you need to have them, when the moment something toxic enters the workspace.
It has happened. I mean, people would think I'm absolutely crazy to stop something immediately when it would happen. But if you build a really strong base, like you're saying, I called them cultural anchors, right? And you pick these people that absolutely match the values you want to instill in the company, then at all cost, one of the other jobs that a founder has is to protect it.
Yeah.
And to try to change the behavior of others, or you have to let them go because you don't want any cracks in that foundation, because just as easily as that spirit of optimism, like you called it, can catch on, the reverse can happen too. You can have a spirit of negativity. And so that's what you're constantly trying to balance.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this so much. And I know I'm just so excited for people to read this book. As you can tell, I really definitely read it cover to cover. And I really enjoyed it. All of the stories in it are so useful and applicable and interesting. And the way you weave in your stories with other stories in the industry, like it's beautifully done. So I want to thank you so much for sharing it with the world. I'm so excited for folks to read it, and I can't wait to buy a bunch of copies and send them to people.
Thank you.
So I'd love to do some rapid fire questions with you all if you'd be willing to do that. Okay. Let's see how I'll do this. I'll read one and then we'll go, I don't know, let's go Kass and then Mike. How about that? Okay. Fill in the blank. Growth is
vulnerability.
Always on.
Love it. Kass, what was the very first thing you realized you were good at as a child?
Multitasking.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Mike, what about you?
Interesting. For me, it was sales. I could get what I wanted within
Kass
reason.
shakes her head. Within reason.
Even though my mom was a lobbyist in DC, public interest lobbyist. Having a lobbyist for a mom means that she thinks in talking points. It's very hard to win an argument, which forced me to be quick, smart, have street sense of like, is this a good time to ask? Is it not? So I think my whole sales, and I'm one of, there are 5 of us siblings. So, and I'm right in the middle. So kind of having to advocate for myself and get what I needed early.
Your whole life just makes sense now. This all just makes sense.
It totally does.
I love it. What was your first job, Kass?
Sweeping tennis courts.
Shoveling snow.
Love it. Probably there was a little bit of shit in that snow from time to time.
Probably. But I didn't care because it was a great
Probably poopsicles. We used to call that up at college. Yeah.
It was a great job.
Yeah. Just foreshadowing this book. Who was the best boss you ever had?
Diane Hartley. She was just amazing. She just would pause in the non-client facing moments and break things down for me. And she also got a kick out of how particular I was about details. And instead of squashing that about me, she just loved it and started using it as like a superpower. But she was just so nice in the off moments and really cheerleading me. It's just always been lovely.
I love that. That's so great. Mike?
For me, I haven't had any bosses really other than left me off when I sold.
Yeah.
Sold Salesforce. But there was a guy who's no longer with us anymore, Doug Bailey, who was an incredible entrepreneur in the DC area. And he started something called the Political Hotline, which was a daily political newsletter that was delivered by fax to anyone who was a political operative or needed to know what was going on the day before. It summarized newspapers in 50 states. And it was like, here's what you need to do. And I, called him because email wasn't around when I was in high school. And I said, I wanted to work for you. And not only did I work for him, but I didn't go on like trips and stuff when I was in high school. I just worked, and he really imparted on me this. He was so creative, this idea that you can come up with an idea and create it and make it happen. And he went on to do just like incredible stuff, not only with that, but had also founded a bunch of other publications and was just an incredible entrepreneur without the benefit or support of venture capital. So it was pretty cool.
Wow, that's amazing. Kass, what's something you're trying to learn right now?
Better sleep hygiene.
Ooh, that's a good one. We all need to be on that tip.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What about you, Mike?
Mike just got me the EP8, which is this system that you put on over your bed, your mattress, and then you put your sheet over it, and it regulates temperature, and it kind of optimizes your body temperature.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's been incredible.
Oh, that's good to know. I need to write that down. That's great.
Yeah, I got it for Kass, but we also sleep in the same bed, so I use it as well. So it was
love it.
She said it like we slept in two different beds, but no, we are happily sleep.
Listen, it's optimizing on my side.
So what was the question?
What's something you're trying to learn?
So I am spending some time, not a lot, building apps, and specifically AI apps on top of the no-code platforms that exist. Okay. And what business people don't realize today is you don't need to be a programmer anymore. You can go to products like Bolt.new and Replit, REPLIT, and instead of asking like ChatGPT, like, hey, put together an itinerary of trips, you could basically say, I want to build an app that does this, this, and this. And AI is really good at building the app. And so it has taken the responsibility for a lot of the heavy lifting away from the engineer and puts it onto the business person. I'm just trying to learn kind of how to build in this AI world.
Yeah.
Because you already have like one-person companies that are doing 20 million in sales, which is amazing.
It's incredible. And thank you for those places to go, because I was just talking to someone about how there's many more ways to do this without knowing how to code. So thank you. I will be going and checking those out.
Lovable.app was one I was using a few days ago over the weekend. And it's the reason why they're incredible is to build an app, you used to have to like set up a database, right?
Yeah.
You needed to know like not only the back end, but also like HTML in the front end. You needed to be able to integrate tags. Now, these apps walk you through how to set up your GitHub instance, which is where engineers it's a repository of code. They tell you how to use products like Supabase, which is like a hosted database. And so it'll automatically set up the database for you. And so the picks and shovels let you they do all the work for you. So then you can focus on the user experience. So one of the apps I was building was basically just upload a picture of your dog, pick which of these 4 styles of art you like, which frames do you like, and it'll send it to your house within 7 days. Like that's not saying, and it's not that I'm going to launch that business, even though I might, but it forces you to think about the 360 customer experience and not have to fight with the code. And it's really just incredible. And anyone who's not kind of diving in using these AI tools as a business executive, as a founder, they're going to be left behind, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was just listening to someone, I can't remember who it was, giving a keynote saying that founders need to get an AI tutor. And I thought it was brilliant.
Totally.
But just like you need someone constantly to, like, I forgot about the concept of the tutor, honestly. And then I was like, oh, an AI tutor sounds very interesting.
But you don't need an AI tutor.
You don't.
Go to AI
to your point, you don't need it.
Like,
exactly. You've got a tutor.
You're my tutor.
Exactly. That's what's so amazing about it. So I can't wait. And also, it's just so freaking fun. It's so fun to be playing with AI right now. So thank you for those. I will definitely be going and playing in that space. Kass, what's something you're trying to unlearn?
Trying to unlearn how I grew up not eating a lot of vegetables. And I'm trying to unlearn my hate of them. That's a weird thing to say, but Mike knows it's spot on. But I always had this like awful taste in my mouth with like broccoli and asparagus, and I'm trying to unlearn it.
I totally get it. I felt like I went through a phase where I had to learn how I liked those things made, because I think for so long they were just prepared in a way that I didn't like them. And then I did fall in love, but it took me a while to figure out how I like them prepared. So congratulations on putting yourself on that journey.
Thank you.
I believe in you. Mike, what are you trying to unlearn?
So I'm really trying to unlearn most of the stuff that got us to where we are today, and really tap into not what we did, but how we did it, because everything's so different. We grew up in software, in a world of enterprise software, and you'd hire very expensive salespeople and you'd have to convince people to use it. Now it's very much lighter software where it's kind of try before you buy. How apps are built, totally different. How businesses are run. So you used to go out and hire like business development reps, right? Or salespeople. We're now automating that for some of our businesses, right? Through these like AI agents. And so it's very easy to say, well, we've always done it this way, but never has it been more dangerous to do it that way. And so I see a lot of businesses from people who maybe are like more advanced in age like me, who are using companies and models that worked in a different time. And my only question is like, if your product is so innovative, why is your business model so stuck in 1999? Like I can't, if you look at all great businesses, it wasn't just a kind of product innovation. A lot of times it was actually a business model innovation.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark Benioff just built CRM system, a customer relationship management system. He actually changed the model where you don't pay up front, you basically pay as you go for usage, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that, why does Netflix take off? Well, it's just same DVDs, but instead of you going to the store, they got shipped to you, and then obviously you download them through the internet, and it's all like streaming. But with great product innovation needs to come business innovation. And I find myself stuck with the burden of what I know.
Yeah. That's so powerful. That's going to be a soundbite right there, because I really, that was one of the other pieces I loved in the book when you talked about how with Buddy Media, you changed the business model 3 times. And it's as an entrepreneur, a reluctant entrepreneur, I'm already seeing, okay, it's time for the business model to change. So when I read that, I was like, this is what it really needs to innovate yourself. It doesn't always mean having a better product offering or whatever. It really means actually doing the hard work of dismantling yourself and your belief system to shift into the evolved next thing. So I think that's really powerful.
Which is hard.
It is
what you just said is so hard to do. And it was
so
hard for us at the beginning. And so one of the things that we wanted kind of to do through the book is take some of these things that like everyone is kind of dealing with and they're pretty hard, and then give you the cheat codes that help you do it smarter and make fewer mistakes. And more importantly, rip the Band-Aid off in a way that kind of pushes you forward versus, you know, once you're locked into a business model, very few businesses pull out of that, right? Great businesses, even the ones that, you know, like, you know, BMW didn't start with cars, right? They were like making airplane engines, and you had Sony was making rice cookers when they started. Like, if you wait too long to reinvent yourself, you're dead. Like, it's too late.
Yeah. Okay, both of you, tell me a book or a movie that changed your life.
Book would be Tuesdays with Morrie. Mike actually gave it to me a very long time ago, and it's a collection of stories about a man and his sociology professor, and he goes back, and it's just these really warm, fuzzy, connected stories that also show the growth over time, which I love. And then I think the movie that just always comes back is When Harry Met Sally. I can watch that movie a million times and just feel good. Or just
Same. So good. Mike, what about you?
So the book that absolutely blew me away and changed my life very recently, I read it on one plane, is this book right here, which is Ethan Hawke, Rules for a Night. And it's a fake letter from a knight about to go into battle, written for his kids about how to be a knight. And while it is based in the medieval times, it's very modern. And there are just lines in this which are haunting and make you realize that, just show you how to act. Like one of them, like, and I like devoured this book, and like, you know, humility, never announce that you are a knight. Simply behave as one. You are better than no one, and no one is better than you.
So good.
Right? So like, there are all these like jewels of the line of like, you know, gratitude. The only intelligent response to the ongoing gift of life is gratitude. Right? For all that has been, a knight says thank you. For all that is to come, a knight says yes. Like, and so it's just like Ethan Hawke, who I've always liked his mind. He just drops like messages in the most simple medieval terms that are really modern. And I've given this to my boys. Like, literally, I went out and I bought all of them that I could find. And everyone who I think needs to be a little more self-aware, I'm basically giving to these days, including myself.
Love it. I love it. Okay, just 3 more questions. Hopefully we can get through these quick. So the first is, when growth feels good, how do you celebrate?
I probably celebrate by sharing it with Mike. I think we sit down and we talk about something that we got through, I think. And it might mean that I actually am not working late into the night because I want to relish the moment.
I love that. Mike?
I mean, I'm not a huge believer in kind of like just celebrating the big times. Like, I kind of like birthdays. Kass doesn't like her birthday. I like celebrating stuff. So even in the most dire of circumstances, you got to kind of laugh a little. And I think we've come to the conclusion that the ultimate luxury in life is time with people you love, like friends. Obviously, the two of us together are kids. And we find ourselves, you know, instead of doing like the grand celebration, it's very much about kind of getting our people together, or just spending time together doing stuff we like, and taking it easy a little.
What about when growth feels hard? How do you take care of yourself?
I go to the gym. It's where I can struggle in the gym, right? Because I don't love working out, but I struggle. But then I'm also can be totally focused and relieve my brain of the struggle, right? So my body can be the focus as opposed to what I'm trying to solve or do something else. It gives me a micro focus that I need to relieve the pain.
I think that's really wise. I hope people who also struggle to work out or who don't enjoy working out hear what you just said. I'm one of those people. So I'm hearing it, putting the pressure on my body and not on my brain.
Exactly.
It
It moves really over. It just takes me over here. And it's like my brain can, if you're trying to lift something or you're on a treadmill or whatever it is you're doing, even like yoga or Pilates, you can't do anything else, which is lovely.
Yeah. And honestly, it's actually medicine for the brain.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. Mike, what about you?
Workout, go for a walk, get sun in the eyes, like sunlight.
Yes.
Sauna, which I think is a killer kind of medicine for cardiovascular, and I have some heart issues. And sleep. I find if I go to sleep, my brain sometimes tells me the answer when I wake up.
I love that. Okay. Last question. When you grow all the way up and you leave this life, what is it that you hope to congratulate yourself on?
Being generous with the people that I love and acquaintances and every person that I kind of run into, just being generous.
Yeah, I love that.
For me, it's hopefully being able to say that we were part of the effort to cure cancer.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. And I'm so glad you ended with that, just to remind the people who are listening that 10% of the gross sales of the book, Shoveling Shit, are going to Cycle for Survival, which I think is amazing. And seeing all of the corporations that have joined in this effort have been great. And you all really being part of that, leading the way in so many ways. So you all are amazing. I'm so honored to be connected to you and grateful for your wisdom and grateful for your continued impact. And I cannot wait to see the success of this book and just your continued impact in the world. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having us and for all of your thoughtful questions. We appreciate you.
Yeah, of course, thank you. Great conversation.
My pleasure. All right, y'all. We will see you next time.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.